Hello and welcome. My name is Marilu and you're listening to the HERA Hotspot podcast, which is all about well-being for women both at home and at work. We'll be talking to female entrepreneurs about their business journey and what inspires them, whilst also what living and working holistically looks like to them. Have you ever wondered where they get their inspiration from or how they de-stress? To hear and be able to relate to other people's journeys can be a powerful reminder to us all of our own inner strength, resilience and abilities, whilst also inspiring us to better ourselves. In this series, we'll also be meeting some holistic practitioners and exploring their wonderful practices and how they can help us in our everyday lives. Today, we'll be exploring my own entrepreneurial journey of the last 10 years briefly and how I arrived at where I am today. So, without further ado, let's dive into my first ever podcast. So today I wanted to look at my entrepreneurial journey with you. It's different for everyone what leads us to our final business resting place. I do believe that we are made up of so many pieces of our history that finally guide us to that point where we're doing what we want to do, what I believe we're here to do. So my journey started 10 years ago when I was 40. Prior to that, I'd been very lucky in that we had decided between my husband and I that I was going to raise the children, who at the time would have been 11, 9, 7 and a wee bairn. And I'd loved that. I loved looking after the children. We had a beautiful home. Prior to that, I had opened a children's second-hand children's wear shop from home when we lived in Gloucestershire, which I used to go to nursery fairs and had an appointment-only showroom in my home, and that was great. I had that was my real dip in the toe, I suppose, of running my own business. I loved the people. I was so excited about all the clothes that we found, beautiful Oshkosh and Lily, lovely designer brands. But at the end of the day, it just didn't make money. It's very hard in second-hand clothing anyway, but particularly in children's. There was no margin. I did it really for the love of it. But actually, loving something, however much it feeds your soul, if you're doing it to make money, reality soon kicked in. So 10 years ago, my husband had neck surgery for a prolapse disc, and although the intention of the surgery was successful, they touched his spinal cord during the operation. So when he woke up, he was in extreme and very powerful pain, and eventually they found out they'd touched his spinal cord and he'd had a spinal stroke. So to this day he suffers with chronic neuropathic pain. So I went from a very easy, relaxed life with a very hard-working husband in a beautiful home to having a husband who was on very strong medication for 3 months, actually, and with hindsight could remember very little of what happened in that period. In fact, he built a unit in the kitchen and has no recollection of it at all. But during that time, we got a huge bit of paper on a wall and kind of mind mapped what we were going to do, because I felt it either fell to me primarily or it would have to be a joint venture, because at the time he wasn't capable of working. So we looked at his history as a landscape gardener. Do we import wood from the Baltics? Do we sell sheds? And I hadn't qualified in anything. I felt I couldn't offer a service industry. So eventually I fell onto making things, because in my panic and my fear of this extreme debilitating pain and circumstance that we were thrown into, I was madly every night making doorstops and cushions and draft excluders, anything that I could sell at the Christmas fairs coming up, whilst also running the house and the children and caring for a very poorly husband. So this dipping my toe back into sewing, which I'd always loved when I was a child, became, I'm going to make a piece of clothing. My father was in clothing manufacture. So it had been in my makeup in my childhood. So it felt familiar. I felt confident in doing it. So I started a children's clotheswear brand, and I designed a top. I made them myself. I remember it took me 2 days to design a collar, having never designed a collar. But I loved it. It really enthused me. Scared the hell out of me as well, I must say. And then I got to the point where I have to have these made. Where do I find a manufacturer? It's not just as easy as looking up manufacturer on Google. So I really had to push myself out of my comfort zone, and I went to visit a handful of manufacturers down in Plymouth, a town near me. And I walked into one, and he was quite a big outfit, and he was a very genial chap. And I sat down with my samples and told him what I wanted to achieve. And none of this was without crying. Every time I had to explain to people why I was doing it, the tears would come. The experience of having an injured husband was just too raw still. So I explained that I wasn't just a housewife that had this idea and fancied creating it. It was a need. And with hindsight, it came out of fear. It came out of a fear of lack and a fear of what we're going to do. Anyway, it transpired that this chap was one of the biggest manufacturers in Europe. Thank goodness I didn't know that before I walked through the door. And he agreed to take me on board. I think he felt he wanted to mentor me and support me, which he duly did. So he had these garments made up, a large quantity, a large investment of money. We went to Turkey and had them made. And then it got to the point where we had to do my first trade show up in London. I'd been promised a box of these tops that I had designed, and the manufacturer let me down, and I ended up doing a trade show with 4 garments, 1 sample of each colourway and each colour. And I thought, how am I going to do a trade show with 4 garments? And we'd taken a 3 metre by 1 metre stand. So we designed a beach on one side and forest on the other side. We had big graphics on the wall, and I made a papier-mâché rock pool with shells and water. And then my husband took up a box of dry stone walling and built a dry stone wall the other side with a fake autumn tree in it. It looked great. We almost won Best in Show. But I still only had 4 garments. And I'd never done a trade show before, and I'd never talked to buyers or anything. It was a real learning curve. I was so nervous. And I do remember my husband saying to me afterwards, "You're rubbish at sales. I don't think you should do this." And I was useless. I was so nervous. I hadn't got my pitch prepared. I had the paperwork, but did not know what I was doing. So the business evolved. I did get my garments. I did do my photo shoots. I did my branding with a wonderful, wonderful chap who taught me so much about branding and how to properly represent your company in every way, with tone of voice and colours and mindset, really. And I got my wholesalers, and I got retailers, and I got a beautiful website, and I loved it. I loved it. I was so passionate, and it's the one thing that anyone would say when they met me: "You're so passionate about it. I love your passion." It was all about children learning from being outside, from collecting treasures and having that sort of forest school education, really before forest schools became popular. At this time, my youngest daughter had turned 1 when my husband had his surgery. So before she started school, this was my passion. This was where all my time was spent. And I remember resenting work from keeping me being a mother, and resenting motherhood from keeping me from work. It was so hard to find the balance. My office, my desk was in the hall, which was in the middle of the house. And when you've got 4 rowdy children running round when they were at home, it made working very difficult, very frustrating. So I would work during sleeps, during the day, or late at night. There was never a respite from the stress or frustration of wanting to achieve. There was no work-life balance, proper work-life, contented balance at all. And alongside that all the time was, again, with hindsight, the fear of this has to work. This has to work because my husband can't work. This has to work because I've invested a lot of money and I have 2,000 garments sitting in storage. This has to work because I don't know what I'd do if I don't do this. Within the community that I was marketing my product to, it was extremely popular. People who appreciated being outside with their children, but this was very niche. With again, hindsight was too niche. I still looked to expand the range. I designed trousers, scarves, hats, tops, bags, blankets. I found someone on People Per Hour to do me CAD drawings. I had a lovely lady do me more pattern designs. I was so enthusiastic for the future. We had a couple of business mentors, one of who took us through the crowdfunding journey. The company wasn't making enough money to really warrant investing more into this new range that I had designed. So I went in a couple of years from a mother of 4 who had never really run her own business to standing in a room either side of people pitching for millions of pounds of business, pitching my business for funding. One of my most nerve-wracking moments, but again, one of my proudest moments because I did it and I would never have thought that I would have done it. So we didn't get the funding. We did get interest, but it wasn't to be. And really sense said that I had to draw a line under it. And it was like losing a baby. It was the passion, the drive, the love, the creative investment, the lack of sleep, all seemed to be wasted. And again, with hindsight, it wasn't. I learned so much. My learning curve was so steep, and it really gave me a grounding and a confidence to move forward in business. So we looked to finding a business that had a wider niche with more than one product, which we did. And I started the Devon Beach Company, which was a coastal product company. We started out with the best barbecue for the beach trolleys, towels, more to do with beach living than anything else. And it went very well. We had, again, a wonderful website. We'd done loads of R&D, travelling to Germany, travelling to lots of trade shows, finding the best that we could find to offer. A beautiful website done, fantastic branding done by the same chap who'd helped me before. And we had a great first year. And then it came to September and it died. There was, again, obviously no need for beach goods after the summer. So we got a business coach on board and we focused on the vintage signal flag goods that we'd made. We'd taken vintage signal flags and made them into cushions and windbreaks and bean bags and bags. And we saw this was a way of expanding the business into more coastal living household items, homewares. So I focused on that and I designed a range of cushions that didn't require the flags, that would be more scalable. So again, I love the designing. It's part of me that I hadn't been using before that I really, really enjoyed. So we got a shop, brilliant. We loved it. We set it up. Again, under budget, under time constraints, but we decked the ceiling with signal flags, more trade shows, more products to find, more investment of money. And it did really well. And it was so lovely to take our trade show experience, our consumer show experience, and which I'd now got better at, and to take that onto the shop floor. And I loved my customers. I was so lucky. They were all so lovely and enthusiastic and appreciative of the shop and the items that we got. And I was starting to perfect the many jobs I had to do, the many hats I had to wear: marketing, PR, advertising, product sourcing, all the accounts, running the shop. So many hats, but that was one of the reasons I loved working for myself. It was never boring. There were so many things to learn, but I couldn't know how to do it all. I outsourced some of the marketing. I've had some wonderful social media people and marketing people over the years who I've learned so much from, who really have given me a grounding of information that I will use today to help others. We had a long-term plan for the business to start making more and more of our own products, to start white branding, and to eventually just have our own products rather than wholesaling other people's products. But it's hard when all your money is tied up in stock to then invest in business. It was after 4 years of running this business, I was approached to help someone set up a lettings business, something I had never considered doing or had any experience of, but I knew about setting up businesses. So I spent the next 6 months learning and designing and creating the business, discovering what the brand identity was, what the communications were going to be, all the structure and the setting up and the contracts of the business. And it was so different from what I'd done, from having a product-based business to suddenly becoming a service industry without having been trained an accountant or a masseur, or not having that. It had never occurred to me to do a product industry with a product that you didn't own. So it had a very, very exciting future at a good time when a local competitor had changed enough that their clients were becoming disenfranchised and were looking for other people, other companies to represent them, which they duly did. The one mistake in this business was not to focus on the legalities of the setup of the business. There was no partnership agreement, there was no shareholder agreement. With hindsight, a grave mistake for both parties. So once the business was set up, another beautiful website done, photography done, contracts done, all the setup systems, booking systems created, it became apparent that working with someone else was very different to working on your own. The autonomy of it, the sharing of responsibilities was very different. And it became clear to me that this particular relationship was untenable. And so I made the very hard decision to walk away. And again, for the second time, it was like walking away from a baby that I had created and nurtured and fed, and not knowing what was going to happen to it. But I realised that for my own mental health, that it was necessary to do it. But again, as with the other two businesses, no experience, no time is ever wasted. And the lessons I'd learned, the contacts I'd made, once more pushing myself out of my comfort zone in all my learnings and hitting the goals of everyone. The learnings were invaluable for all of this, and it was a fascinating and exciting journey that I'm sad to be no longer part of. But had I not walked away from that, had I not spent time licking my wounds and taking stock of where I'd been, of what I'd achieved, of what I was capable of, what lessons and skill set I had learned along the journey, I wouldn't be here now. I realised that all three businesses were approached with excitement and anticipation and hope, and underlying all of that was fear of lack, was fear of them not being successful, was fear of, but what if? What do I do now? How do I support the family, do my bit if I don't have this? It was a long period of self-reflection and of really asking myself, what I really wanted to do, not what I was good at. As a friend pointed out, you could do anything with your skill set, but actually what do you want to do? What will feed your soul? Which is when I focused on the secret part of my life, which many people didn't know I had as a businesswoman, was my holistic side, was my love of energy medicine in all its forms, was what I had been practicing with my family for 2 years prior to that, was my touch for health. This was what was most precious to me. This really was my baby because it had so much of me in it, so much of what I loved and I connected to and understood and related to, that it was almost too precious to share and to be honest about. But then I realised that if that was my real love, if that's what I truly connected with, then that's what I had to do. Because there was no fear in that. There was only love. There was only love of the discipline, love of what it could do, not only for myself, but for my family and my friends. And I don't think you can go wrong if that is your basis, if that is the authenticity that lies behind what you do, then it can only create flow and love and abundance. So I completed my training in my touch for health and I set up my business, which was initially called Libra Living because I didn't really know what else to call it. Libra is my star sign, and very much it's about balance and seeing both sides of everything, which I do think represents what touch for health is. And living is about living and thriving, and not just striving. And I'd been striving for almost 10 years, striving to make a difference, striving to make things work, fearful if they didn't. And now it was time to thrive in health, both physical, emotional and mental, and to go with the flow of my business and to help it to thrive and have the positive impact on other people's lives that I'd wanted for so long. So while this business was still very new, I was approached by a local company to help them with their marketing and their operations. So I dipped my toe into their service and had a couple of meetings and was hugely excited about once again using that analytical part of my brain that I'd found so capable over the years and so triggered by everything I'd done. And I got excited about doing it, about what I could offer, digging those skill sets out, organising it all. It didn't come to pass, but it did light that part of me again that made me question, am I a businesswoman or am I a holistic therapist? I love my holistic therapy and that's true to my soul and what I want to do, but I miss the exciting part of business of being able to use my creativity and my knowledge and my skill set in order to create something visual and exciting that will grow into a business. Which is when I decided to morph Libra Living into HERA Holistic, to finally ask myself the question, who is my niche? Who is my ideal client? And my ideal client really is me of 5 years ago, is that lone female entrepreneur who is so passionate and so excited about what she does, but also not drowning a little, but maybe consumed by her businesses and all the different hats she has to do, all the different roles that she has to be aware of. And it's very easy to get lost in what you want your business to be, how you want to represent it and represent yourself and how you want it to grow. And I decided I really wanted to be able to be a mentor for those ladies, to be the second person to have that conversation with, to help them look at their goal statements, look at their stresses, look at if their life was balanced, and to offer not only the entrepreneurial support, not only to offer my skill set, but also surrounding all of that was the holistic approach, was understanding how we're all energy, the power of thought, and the power of how we choose to care for ourselves, both physically and mentally, and also most importantly, spiritually. So I'm hugely excited that for the first time I get to combine my two passions of business and branding and marketing, and also living holistically and with energetic balance and harmony, so that we can be the best version of ourselves in all ways, with an ease and a trust that all will be well as we go forward being our authentic selves. So I hope you've enjoyed hearing a little about my journey over the last 10 years. And as I look out of the window as I record this, watching the birds fly and the sun shining and the trees just starting to bud, spring is on the verge. I'm hugely excited about the future of HERA Holistic, and I'm excited to meet my female entrepreneurs and to move forward with them and for the future of the company. Thank you so much for listening to the HERA Hotspot podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Maybe you'd like to check out our website, heraholistic.co.uk. Next week, we'll be delving into Touch for Health and what a treatment would look like and all the benefits that go with it. Until then, take care.